I'm Dwight Drummond. Tonight, graphic testimony in the Headley frontman Jacob Hogarth's sexual assault trial. One of two complainants against Hogarth testifies against the musician, alleging he raped her. Plus,
say to students, it's okay if you need the time. If the last 2 years have been so difficult that you need the time to recover.
The Liberals pledge a return to an optional grade 13 if elected to help teens catch up on missed class time during the pandemic. We'll bring you all the highlights of day 3 of the election campaign. And
it hurts at the pump.
Before I put like $40 was full tank. Now it's like $70, $80.
Digging deeper in your pocket to pay for fuel, gas prices hit a record high in the city, and they are not done climbing yet. The testimony of a young woman continued today at the sexual assault trial of Canadian musician Jacob Hogarth. She's one of two complainants in the case against the Headley lead singer. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson has the latest, and we want to warn you that the details of this case are graphic and may be disturbing for some viewers.
Good morning, Jacob. Are you looking forward to...
They waited 4 years to face him in court, but now the two women accusing Jacob Hogarth of sexual assault are sharing their stories, including some graphic details. We cannot share their names or identifying information because of a publication ban. The first complainant started her testimony yesterday. She said she met Hogarth at the age of 12 at a Headley concert, staying in touch with him over the years. Eventually, at the age of 16, she says she agreed to meet him for what she believed was a day out in Toronto. Instead, she says she was driven to a Toronto area hotel. He sent a limo to drive her there. She alleges Hogarth pinned her on the bed and proceeded to rape her. While she stayed composed for most of the testimony, at one point she became emotional. She alleges she told him to stop. I'm crying and I'm telling him, stop, that hurts. No, I don't want to do this. And he's just continuing going. She said Hogarth called her degrading names and that their encounter left her hurt and bleeding. Much of the cross-examination of Hogarth's legal team focused on finding inconsistencies in the complainant's testimony, questioning her record-keeping of their phone conversations and text messages. The second accuser is slated to speak next week. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Grade 13 may be a distant memory for most of us, but it could become a reality for some of today's teenagers if the Liberals are elected next month. It's part of their education plan. Stephen Del Duca says it is needed to support students after 2 years of the pandemic. Lorena Redekop explains.
It's an optional grade 13. It's not compulsory.
Surrounded by high school students, Stephen Del Duca announced a Liberal government would fund an extra year of high school for at least 4 years. While students do have the option of an extra year now, he says it's discouraged.
It's a more kind of empathetic and I think structured way to say to people, it's okay. To say to students, it's okay if you need the time. If the last 2 years have been so difficult that you need the time to recover and to get kind of back up on your feet so you are confident and ready to go off to what comes next for you, we've got your back.
PC leader Doug Ford wouldn't directly respond to the idea, but criticized the previous Liberal government.
We're building schools and we're putting $14 billion into building new schools as they close down 600 schools.
NDP leader Andrea Horwath said the Liberals are the ones who got rid of grade 13 almost 20 years ago.
Stephen Del Duca can say anything he wants now, but it was the Liberals that got rid of grade 13 in Ontario. And I think it confuses people.
Even over closer to the beginning of the pandemic, some of our members said you never should have gotten rid of grade 13.
The Secondary School Teachers Union says one problem is a teacher shortage and the Ontario College of Teachers' slow pace in certifying teachers.
So these are graduates, they are fully qualified, yet they don't have the paperwork to work in the schools in Ontario.
She says the union will be endorsing a mix of NDP, Liberal and Green candidates, but no PCs. When grade 13 ended the last time, it led to the so-called double cohort and stress over not enough space at colleges and universities with 2 grades competing for spots. This student trustee worries about a possible return to that. He can't imagine taking an extra year, but says the pandemic has taken a toll.
the class of 2022. The last time they had exams was in 2020, and I've heard from students, many of them don't feel very prepared for post-secondary.
The Liberals also plan to hire 10,000 more teachers, 5,000 special education workers, and 1,000 mental health professionals.
The full cost of the Liberals' education platform is still to come, but Del Duca says adding grade 13 will total $295 million over 4 years. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
PC leader Doug Ford is trying to appeal to voters in the 905, saying his party will extend GO train service in Durham region, including to Bowmanville. Ford says the province needs this type of infrastructure to stop gridlock.
I'm here to tell you that we don't have to choose between transit and highways, because we're saying yes to new transit and we're saying yes to building new highways right across this province. With Ontario's population growing, we need a plan that builds roads, highways, and transit.
Ford says his party will invest $730 million to bring two-way, all-day, 15-minute GO train service to all the way to Bowmanville. He's also recommitting to building more roads, including Highway 413, the Bradford Bypass, and investing in the 401 East. Housing was top of mind for the NDP today. Andrew Horwath announcing a plan to start construction on 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years if elected.
What I want to say to folks is that I want you to hold on to your dreams of home ownership. I want you to hold on to those dreams because we have a plan that will give you a lifeline.
Horwath said her housing plan, which would cost $3.7 billion over the first 4 years, aims to make it more affordable for families to have their own home. A government-commissioned task force earlier this year recommended building more than 1 million homes in the province. The NDP plan would include starter homes, rental properties, and affordable housing units. Many construction sites went silent this week when building framers and installers went on strike. Now, thousands of carpenters are expected to walk off job sites on Monday. The president of the union representing Ontario carpenters said they are striking for the same reasons: better pay and recognition for the essential work they did during the pandemic.
Main stumbling block right now is about money. We have to be recognized for our contributions to the industry, as I stated earlier. So, yeah, it'll be a challenging time, but it's very unique because, like I said, this has not happened for years and years and years where you had this much kind of labor unrest within the industry at negotiations times.
This is just the latest job action hammering the construction industry. If a deal is reached this weekend, then a strike could be averted. But as of right now, 15,000 carpenters in the industrial and commercial sector are in a strike position. Gas prices in Toronto are creeping up on to $2 a liter. Today it will cost you $1.95. That's a record. Clara Paseca has more.
I'm at a gas station in Etobicoke where the price of gas is $1.94.9. Believe it or not, that's a steal. It's a whole cent cheaper than gas we saw up the road. The average price of gas today hitting $1.95.9 in the Toronto area has many commuters we spoke with worried.
I have to limit my trips. I have to limit it to just in the morning, go to work and then back. That's it.
$113 to fill my gas tank. When a year ago it would have been 60, 70, almost double.
We're getting killed everywhere, and now interest rates are going up, and I think it's at the worst possible time.
So why the sky-high pricing? CBC News spoke to Dan McTagg, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, to tell us why.
Tightness in supply of oil, tightness in supply of diesel, and causing tightness in supply in gasoline. Putin's war has not helped, but the fact of the matter is that the global economy is emerging from 2.5 years of slowdowns, of COVID-related slowdowns. This period of catch-up and dislocation is putting in greater pressure on a supply, on a product that has not been as made to meet this demand.
And it's a problem unlikely to go away anytime soon. Clara Paseca, CBC News, Toronto.
If you tried to get your passport renewed, you may have noticed that it's taking a lot longer than usual. There have been major lineups around the city of people just trying to get in to passport offices. We spoke with people at one downtown location who had been waiting for hours before the office even opened.
Out here at 7:40. 6:45, 6:50.
We came in from Coburg, and we aim to be here for 4 o'clock this morning.
Definitely frustrating. I have waited before, before COVID and stuff like that. Nothing like this, though. It just feels like they're unprepared.
With pandemic restrictions being eased in Canada and around the world, the federal government has pegged these delays to massive surge in passport applications. Now, Ottawa recently said they're receiving more than 200,000 calls per day for passport requests at Service Canada. That's 40 times more calls than pre-pandemic levels. The feds say it should take no longer than 25 business days to receive your passport once you apply. Our Leafs are looking to pull ahead tonight in Game 3 of their first-round playoff series against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Toronto is on the road after playing their first 2 games here at home. Greg Ross joins us now from Maple Leaf Square. Greg, a challenge is ahead for our team, with Tampa having some momentum now.
Absolutely, Dwight. This is going to be a big test for the Leafs. They're going to have to find a way to bounce back after that difficult loss here at Scotiabank Arena on Wednesday night, and they're going to have to do it in a very difficult building to play in for visiting teams, and they have to do it against probably the best playoff team of the last few years anyways in the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, 3 of the next 4 games of this series are going to be played in Tampa, so the Leafs are definitely going to have to find a way to win at least one of those games to have any chance to win this series. And why not get that out of the way now, as opposed to having to do it when your back is up against the wall, when you're in a bit of a hole. So the Leafs know that they have to get off to a good start in this game tonight. Leafs captain John Tavares talked about putting that game on Wednesday night in Game 2, that tough loss, behind them.
You know, it's a fresh start. It's a new game. Everything's back on level terms. You know, some of the variables change. You know, obviously now we're in Tampa, so some of those things. But I think it's just because it's a fresh start. It's back to 0-0 hockey, and get to reestablish the momentum. It doesn't really truly carry over just because of the start of a new game.
Now, one of the things that the Leafs won't have in this game tonight is that amazing crowd behind them that they had here at Scotiabank Arena. They were incredibly loud. The players and coaching staff talked about just how integral they were in those first 2 games, how especially in Game 1 they got a big boost from those fans. But I have been talking to some colleagues who are in Tampa. They tell me they're seeing a lot of Leaf fans down there, a lot of people in Tampa walking around the streets wearing Leaf jerseys, so maybe they will hear those fans in that game tonight, Dwight.
Yeah, a lot of Canadians down there in Florida. Now, Greg, the Leafs didn't take the traditional travel choice to Tampa, opting to go through Buffalo instead.
Yeah, this was something that we've seen actually by some other teams as well. And the reason for that is because anyone flying into the U.S. is required to provide a negative rapid antigen test for COVID-19. But if you drive across the border, you don't have to provide a negative antigen test. So to avoid that testing, a number of teams are doing this. They're driving into Buffalo and flying out of Buffalo. We saw the Philadelphia 76ers did it in their first round series against the Raptors. Both the Blue Jays and Yankees just finished up a series over at the Rogers Center earlier this week, and they both flew out of Buffalo. Today, Sheldon Keefe talked about why his Leafs did the exact same thing.
The biggest thing was really just following the lead of the NBA and MLB teams that have been making that the trip across the border. I think the biggest thing at this point of the year really is just to do all that we can to avoid any false positives or things like that might come up.
Yeah, think of the impact that would have if you were to get a positive test for a star player like Austin Matthews, who then may be required to sit here in Canada, miss this game tonight, possibly miss more games as well. So the Leafs deciding to do it this way and make sure that all of their players are in the lineup tonight, Dwight.
Yeah, we'll need every one of them. Thank you for that, Greg. That's our Greg Ross at Maple Leaf Square. We'll check in with Greg in a bit. Not a bad night for those fans out there in Maple Leaf Square, Victoria. Victoria fan Alvarado filling in for Carlotta today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it looks like a nice evening to be out at Maple Leaf Square. We do have some cloud cover, but really temperatures have been quite decent the past couple of days. Hopefully you've been able to partake in some spring activities. Currently 15 degrees in Toronto, London, Windsor 14, and perhaps you're up visiting the cottage. 18 degrees is what it's like in Muskoka. Now, usually when I join you here at CBC, I feel like the past couple of times I have reported rain or cooler conditions, but luckily the conditions are going to be quite stagnant the next couple of days, and that's because we have a block of high pressure which is keeping this low pressure system down to the south, down to our neighbors in the U.S. who are going to be dealing with some unsettled conditions, but our conditions are actually going to be quite fair. Now, we take a look at our UV index, for example, and our level that we record that at, we're looking at about an 8 for Toronto, London 7, and Windsor and Ottawa also in that 7 and 6 range. Now, when we look at that criteria, we're looking at what you need to know and what you need to take precaution in. So an 8 range should be extra precaution. So wear a hat and also some sunscreen. Even if you're at a level 6, which Windsor is, still wear that UV protection. I know it's not quite beach weather just yet, but you can still take that extra step in helping out your face. As we take a look at your Sunday and Mother's Day, sunshine up ahead for your Mother's Day. So my mother likes to garden. This is the perfect condition for her to go out and start gardening as well. The cherry blossoms are also in bloom, so maybe a good idea to head out, take your mother on a patio, do something nice.
Good advice, Victoria. We have no problem. We can talk about UV rays right now, all you want.
For sure, I'm into that, 100%.
Thank you.
See you later.
Would you buy a home above a fire hall? As planners and researchers look for creative ways to address the housing crisis, this is one solution that's being explored here in Toronto. Talia Ricci explains.
The vibes aren't exactly home sweet home at this fire station, but some say it could be one day.
My dream scenario is that we have amazing public facilities like fire stations that are fit for purpose for the firefighters who do really critical work for our community. And then we create places for people to live that are nicely integrated into the surrounding community, and that we're creating spaces that are affordable.
The University of Toronto's School of Cities and Create.to have been looking at this idea together, focusing on the potential of Fire Station 313 on Bloor Street.
This is a fire station that's been around now for about 35, 40 years. It's at the end of its natural life. It has a significant state of good repair backlog. It's a site that Toronto Fire, working with Create.to in the city, has prioritized for rebuild. With that need comes the opportunity for redevelopment.
Their research found it's been done successfully in other places before. Toronto Fire Services says it is aware that some people might not be excited by the idea of neighborly sirens, but to that, the chief says,
the noise thing is kind of an interesting thing because by the very nature of what we do, people assume that we're really terrible neighbors, and in reality, we're not. A fire station is a very community-friendly facility. This proposal for this site looks at putting some community space in the floors immediately above the fire station, which of course provides a natural sound buffer and a natural barrier between that and any affordable housing that comes in.
Toronto Fire says it's looking at maximizing the potential of several other stations. The city also points out that this site has a lot going for it, like nearby transit.
But it also sits in a great location in Toronto. It's surrounded by high density.
While the proposal is in its early days, Sia Matiki is excited about all the future possibilities.
Once you start thinking about fire services, why not start thinking about the entire city portfolio of real estate, like libraries and community centers and rec centers and pools? We could be doing so much more.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
We got a tour today of one of the city's largest and most highly anticipated construction projects, The Well. The multi-use development will take up nearly 8 acres of space at Front and Spadina, replacing what used to be the old Globe and Mail building. The site will include a 36-story office tower and multiple condo buildings, each as high as 46 stories. Those towers will all rise above a base of shops, restaurants, and a fresh food market. Developers say they look to similar sites in Europe for their inspiration.
It's going to be full of animations, performers, buskers. There's going to be seating, there's going to be a restaurant, there's going to be food, there's going to be gelato, there's going to be espresso vendors. This is going to be an area where people want to come, they want to spend the day.
You had me at gelato, buddy. Underneath that retail space sits a 7.6 million liter tank that pulls in water from Lake Ontario. Developers say this will serve as a low-carbon alternative to heating and cooling the complex. I guess that's why it's called the well. It's set to be completed in June 2023, though occupants of the condos and offices will start moving in. Unemployment in Canada has dropped to another record low. Stats Canada says the rate slipped to just 5.2% in April. Experts are saying the job market is tight right now, and it could get even tighter. Alison Northcott reports.
After months out of the labor market to focus on school, 18-year-old Robin Spivak has started a new job, earning just above minimum wage at a coffee chain downtown.
Everyone needs to work at some point. You got to get back into it.
Though job growth in Canada slowed last month, the economy recorded the lowest unemployment rate on record.
So we see on Indeed job postings well above their pre-pandemic levels.
This economist says a shrinking pool of available workers makes it harder for businesses already struggling to recruit, and they'll need to look at ways to compete, like higher wages. But this not-for-profit summer camp needs 100 workers quick and says it can't raise wages without raising fees.
It's been extremely difficult this year. I would say we've shifted a lot of our resources to recruiting and hiring. So we've really had to go above and beyond to try and find people.
Along with job posting sites, visits to job fairs, and ads on Facebook and Google, they're also creating videos for TikTok and Instagram, trying to connect with the young workers they need.
We're getting to a point where there aren't many available workers left.
And this economist says in all sectors, the labor market could get even tighter as Canada's population ages.
Even with the ambitious immigration targets of over 400,000 people per year between now and 2024, that might not be enough to compensate for the number of workers who are leaving the workforce.
That could give some leverage to those coming into the workforce if employers offer higher wages or more flexibility to attract workers.
When I get back into the school year, I'll have a little bit extra money saved up.
For Spivak, she hopes to turn her part-time job into a full-time one this summer. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
A 19-year-old man in Windsor is facing a terrorism charge after he allegedly applied to join a banned neo-Nazi group. Seth Bertrand already faced charges in connection with homophobic and racist vandalism. Chris Ensing has more.
My family kind of went through a little bit of a traumatic experience.
Aaron Bergeron describes it as an attack, feeling targeted by Seth Bertrand last May because of his pride flag. Here's video from that night. A man runs up to the lawn, drops a brick, and carries something to the porch. Seconds later, he picks up the brick, throwing it at the window. It misses. Bergeron took a photo of that note.
Basically, it was just filled with hateful messages and slurs and talking about how they know who we are and they know where we live.
At the top of that note, the name Otwoffen. Police charged Bertrand with mischief for this attack months earlier. The Trans Wellness Ontario building was vandalized and damaged. Bertrand was charged with multiple counts of mischief, charging documents saying his acts, quote, incite hatred against an identifiable group, namely the LGBTQ community. Now he's facing a terrorism charge. The RCMP says between February and May of 2021, the 19-year-old joined a listed terrorist entity, and he offered to perform tasks for the group. That group, the same one from the note on Bergeron's door. That Wolfen Division, also known as the National Socialist Order, was listed as a terrorist entity by Canada last February.
We do the work we do because we think the far right is an important and very dangerous threat.
Patrick Hermison is a researcher with Hate No More based in the United Kingdom.
It's a very extreme group that's kind of influenced the rest of the online far right to an extreme degree. The tricky thing with these groups is that because they're so online focused, they are decentralized in their nature. They have different sort of cells, which is part of their intention. It's hard to sort of give you a clear hierarchy of them.
The RCMP said they will not comment on the case. Bergeron found out about the charges today.
Well, I'm sad for this person, but I am also very grateful that the RCMP is going forward with this kind of a charge.
Bertrand's lawyer said that he doesn't know why the charges are being laid now, when the allegations stem from charges laid last year. He called that both troubling and problematic. Bertrand appears in court later this month. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
The UN says another effort is being made to get civilians and soldiers out of the steel mill in Mariupol, Ukraine. The Secretary General says previous efforts rescued 500 people, but it's thought about 200 civilians are still inside the facility. The steel mill is the last pocket of resistance in Mariupol, and Russian forces have been intensifying their assault on the complex this week. Ellen Moore now has the latest from Ukraine.
The Azovstal steel factory, a dark symbol of this brutal war. The fighting there again intensifying even as rescue crews were en route. Another attempt to save the hundreds of civilians, including children, still trapped inside. Some did manage to get out, dozens of civilians saved from the plant, arriving in a nearby Russian-controlled town, carrying what little they have left and untold trauma. Their city has been decimated. This was Mariupol before the war, a bustling port. These haunting ruins are all that remains. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Mariupol is being tortured to death, calling the assault terrorism and hatred. Taking full control of Mariupol would be a prize for Russia ahead of Monday, May 9th, when it celebrates its victory over Nazi Germany. Ukrainian officials have warned Russia's onslaught could escalate as that day looms. All the while, civilians suffer. Natalia Zemolkina and her friend Valentina fled Sloviansk in the east when the shelling became unbearable. We are angry, says Natalia. One person decided to do this and he destroyed the lives of everyone. They now live in a shelter in Lviv, coming to the train station for free meals. They only have the clothes they're wearing. Others are fleeing Ukraine altogether. Yulia Butova and her 4 daughters are bound for Germany. My daughter's mental health is destroyed, Butova says. If you didn't live through the shelling, you will never understand. But with these escapes come torturous goodbyes, fighting-age men forced to stay behind. They know this could be their last hug. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Lviv.
A powerful explosion has killed at least 8 people and injured dozens in a hotel in Havana, Cuba. The country's president says it was likely caused by a gas leak. The blast happened this morning at the Hotel Saratoga, a multi-story building in Old Havana, and it ripped away a large section of the outer wall of the building. A school next door had to be evacuated. Search and rescue efforts were being conducted for people possibly trapped in the rubble. Officials say the hotel was undergoing renovations and no tourists were staying there. Voters across the UK have gone to the polls to elect their local representatives in contests that are being seen as a referendum on Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and his Conservatives have suffered some significant losses. Tom Perry has the details now from London.
In England, Scotland, and in Wales, these were local elections for local councils. So Boris Johnson not on the ballot, but clearly on voters' minds. The Conservatives have suffered big losses so far in this election. And what Conservative candidates are saying is that when they went to people's doors, what they heard a lot about was Partygate. That's a scandal here in the UK, revelations that Boris Johnson and his staff held parties during the pandemic when the rest of the country was under lockdown. Now, the Prime Minister has spoken about last night's results.
This has been a tough night for Conservatives in some parts of the country, and in other parts of the country we're actually moving forward. And so for midterm, it's quite interesting that it's a mixed set of results. But the lesson is, we've got to get on with the stuff that matters.
It was a bad night for the Conservatives. Labour did better. They won some historic victories here in London, taking over councils that have been held for decades by the Conservatives.
The trust that we're rebuilding, that's putting us on the road to number 10, on the road to that general election. Yes. That change this last 2 years has been really hard for us as a party, but we've done it. We've built those solid foundations.
Outside the capital, though, Labour didn't do as well. Liberal Democrats and the Greens, they've made some gains that they're very happy with. Votes now still being counted in Scotland, in Wales, and in Northern Ireland, where voters there are choosing their assembly. Tom Parry, CBC News, London.
Experts are calling for better public education campaigns to prevent unsafe sleep environments for babies. Over 11 years, CBC News found more than 1,300 incidents of infant death in Canada. Carissa Duncan has this report from the CBC News investigation series called Safe Sleep.
There is something so peaceful about watching a baby sleep. But as researchers and health officials have long been telling us, it's important to make sure that sleep is safe. But there is evidence that message may not be getting through in recent years. Despite more than a decade of telling parents not to bed share with their babies, Health Canada pointed to statistics that show as many as 1/3 of parents still frequently bed share. On top of that, Statistics Canada data published last year showed more than 90% of infants who died in their sleep between 2015 and 2020 were in an unsafe sleep environment. It's not always clear what role the unsafe sleep environment may have played in a baby's death, but some researchers say more should be done to make infant safe sleep a priority. Those experts include Dr. Ian Mitchell.
It has to be placed nationally as a priority, and it has to be placed much higher at a government level provincially.
CBC News asked coroners and medical examiners across Canada for all reports on incidents where infants under 12 months died in an unsafe sleep situation between 2009 and the end of 2019. We received information on more than 1,300 deaths. Only 476 contained detailed information on the baby's sleep situation, and of those, at least 61% were bed sharing.
Taking the baby into bed with you increases the risk. It's not a high risk, and most parents get away with it, but not all parents get away with it.
Health Canada recommends babies be placed to sleep on their back, alone, on a safe surface, like a bassinet or a crib, without any clutter around them. The guidelines say the risk of suffocation goes up when babies sleep with another person. The agency also says breastfeeding reduces the risk of sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS. But even when parents are up and busy feeding multiple times a night, Health Canada says baby should go back to its own sleep space after each feeding. Dr. Rachel Moon has painful conversations weekly with parents who've lost an infant, and she believes many of the deaths are preventable.
They thought that it was okay because they had done it the night before. And if you've done it once and everything turned out okay, you're going to assume that it's going to be okay going forward. And that's the thing that the parents keep telling me. I wish I had known.
Moon says researchers need to better understand why parents bed share with their babies and then tweak their messaging. Health Canada issued updated safe sleep guidelines last year, but stopped short of a public education campaign. The agency declined an interview request. Carissa Duncan, CBC News, Fredericton.
Victoria Fenn Alvarado from the Weather Network filling in for us today. And Victoria, you have good news for us, don't you?
I do, an abundance of sunshine. Are you a fan of the sunshine?
Yes, ma'am.
Me too. I'm one of those warm-blooded people. I like the sunshine. I like the heat. We get up to 14 hours of sunlight for your Sunday and Monday, so that's good news. Take advantage. I was talking about the UV rays earlier. Wear that sunscreen. Forecast high for Saturday, 13 degrees, just below that normal mark. Normally we're at around 17 degrees, but did you notice that the days are getting so much longer? The sun sets at 8:27 p.m. tomorrow, so take full advantage of that sunny Saturday. Temperatures 13 degrees Toronto, like I mentioned. London, though, 15. Windsor, 17. Hamilton, up to 13 there. And we do have some gusty winds, but not necessarily a factor unless you're by the lake. They are gusting from the northeast, so if you are near a lake, the lakes are still kind of cool, so any breeze coming off of that is going to feel a degree or two cooler. And speaking of lakes, if you're headed to the cottage, 15 degrees in Gravenhurst, 15 in Beaverton and Huntsville as well. Full sunshine, so get up early, head to the cottage for the weekend. It's the perfect weekend to be there. And now we are sandwiched in between these two lows, and the high pressure is acting like a force field, and it is keeping temperatures fairly stagnant. Now, will we see 20-degree temperatures? It might be coming up this week. I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit, but temperatures are going to be fairly warm. Up to 20 degrees is possible on your Wednesday. We'll talk more about this later on as well.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
The Maple Leafs are looking for some redemption tonight after a 5-3 loss to the Lightning on Wednesday night. Let's go back to Greg Ross now. Greg, Scotiabank Arena will be quiet tonight, but it will be loud right where you are, right there in Maple Leaf Square.
That's right, Dwight. You know, we talked about earlier how the Leafs have to turn the page on that loss the other night. These fans have already turned the page. They are excited, they're energized, and they are confident. You aren't worried at all about the fact that the Leafs lost in Game 2 of this?
No, that was just a warm-up for us. That was a warm-up for us. We came, they beat us up in the first round, so you know what, we were just a little bit tired. Maybe that's the reason why.
You're not worried at all either?
No, the Leafs, if you're a true fan, you know they're the best, and everybody has their loses. And you know what, you can only go up from here, so big time, keep on rocking.
All right, so these fans are ready for the Leafs to bounce back, just like we saw the Lightning bounce back in Game 2 of this series. But I think the problem is the Leafs are on the road now. It's a lot more difficult when you're on the road. Are you worried about that at all?
Tampa fans don't do it like the Leafs fans. They're a bunch of lizards over there. A bunch of lizards.
You're not worried at all. So these fans here are confident. The Leafs do have a tough task ahead of them tonight, Dwight. There's no doubt about it. They're playing in a very difficult building against a very difficult playoff team, but these guys here are ready to party. They want a celebration, and they'll get it on a Friday night, Dwight, if the Leafs can pull off the victory tonight.
Oh, it'd be nice to get a win tonight. Thank you for that, Greg. Fingers crossed. As we head to break, let's take a look at where the markets closed today. Another lower day on the markets. The TSX closed down by 62 points, the Dow falling by 98 points, and our dollar also traded lower at 77.63 cents US. We're coming right back. If you've seen a 96-year-old man belting out a tune in a Toronto hospital, it was probably George Linton. For the past 3 decades, the former journalist has been volunteering his time to sing to patients in need of a pick-me-up, and he's recently received a special award in honor of his work. We tagged along on one of his recent sing-alongs.
George Linton, Linton, age, you want to know age?
Please, yes, tell me your age.
96.
George, do you know why we're here today?
I believe we're here to get some information about music that I've done in hospitals and in retirement homes.
Well, we're actually here for this award you've won.
Oh, I see.
So you won this award because of your work as a volunteer.
Yes.
Were you surprised?
I guess I was. Just direct your feet to the sunny side. The reason I do is because I know that people enjoy it. You can tell by the expressions on faces. You can tell by the fact that sometimes they hum along a song that they know from way back. Sometimes they'll remember something, and they'll tell you, that brings me back to such and such, and they'll tell you in 2 or 3 minutes something important to them, and that's useful. I mean, that's helpful, because you're sharing a beautiful memory.
How does it make you feel?
Ah, good. Yeah, it's always nice if somebody shares with you something that's important to them. Because it isn't raining, rain, you know it's raining violets.
I was going to ask you, how did it feel about winning this award?
Well, maybe getting that reward would somehow encourage other young folks, not old folks who's 96 like me, but young folks to do music in hospitals, retirement homes, and places where folks who need a lift are found.
Is that what keeps you going?
Yeah. Yeah. What's more important? If you can find something you, not only you like doing, but other people are going to enjoy it, why not keep at it? Well, thank you, George. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, George. What is a close call? The answer, last night's Jeopardy result for the reigning Toronto champ.
I don't know if I've ever said this. We come to Matea Roach first. She was in second place with $13,000. What film did you write down? What is Citizen Kane? If this is it, thanks for the fun. It is Citizen Kane. Yes, the newsreel starting that film shows us Kane's home of Xanadu. So you're going to add $12,999. You have $25,999. And for the moment, you're in first place. Sarah Snyder was in the lead with
And she would stay there for the first time in her 23 appearances on Jeopardy. Matea Roach entered the final round from behind. Her knowledge of the mid-20th century movies was just enough to get her another win and even shock the young Canadian in the process. Roach has now won $560,000 American and remains fifth on the show's all-time consecutive win list. She'll go for win number 24 tonight. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Toronto's cherry blossoms are in bloom just in time for Mother's Day. You're looking at Hyde Park, one of the city's most popular sites for blossom viewing. For the past 2 years, the city had a live stream with real-time footage of the blossoms due to COVID restrictions, but there's nothing like seeing the blossoms in person. We all know how stunning the trees are, but do you know the history of how they came to grow in Toronto? It all stems from a relationship that blossomed between Japan and Ontario more than 6 decades ago. Shannon Martin shares the story.
The Japanese Citizens Association in Toronto stages its annual Cherry Blossom Festival. But though the blossoms may be in bloom in Japan, they aren't out yet in southern Ontario.
It's 1964, and Hyde Park is the spot to see sakura bloom. The trees arrived in Toronto several years earlier in 1959. That's when thousands were first planted in Hyde Park as a gift from Tokyo to Toronto. The mayor back then, Nathan Phillips.
Been a very friendly relationship between the city of Toronto and the metropolitan Tokyo.
In 1959, when those trees were donated, Toronto was a very different city.
Gary Kawaguchi is a third-generation Canadian of Japanese descent.
My parents, grandparents, they were all interned, born in Canada. But after the internment, the Second World War, they couldn't go back to their homes in BC because the government had confiscated and sold it. So the government was trying to deport them, even though they were born here. So 4,000 of the 23,000 people went back to Japan. The rest of them moved east. And when they moved east to places like Toronto, it was a tough place at that time to settle, and they had nothing. The best way to think of it, my mother, who was born in 1926, worked as a domestic with her cousin in Forest Hill when she first came to Toronto. Forest Hill had a bylaw until the early 50s that if you were of Japanese descent, you weren't allowed into Forest Hill. So that's the kind of environment that it was. Very difficult, hard to think of.
After the Second World War, those first trees from Japan were a way to say thank you. Not only a symbol of Japanese culture, but of friendship, a bond that blossomed over the decades. In the early 2000s, the seeds for the Sakura project were planted. The goal to see 3,000 cherry blossom trees bloom across Ontario over the next decade.
Today is a great day for this big project, reunion.
20 years later, on Earth Day, a celebration of the project's lasting success and plans to keep it growing.
We're working to ensure that those that have been planted are able to be maintained in a way to allow them to continue to flourish and to blossom. And the beauty of it is that Toronto residents are able to go and basically visit and see and have the wonderful experience of, you know, seeing nature and being in nature and so on, and the just the beauty of it. It is such a beautiful, magnificent sight to behold.
So this year, we're planning to
plant some more trees all over Toronto. And if you go to Japan, you see Sakura tunnel on both sides. And people walk around or eat a lunch under the Sakura tree. And that's kind of a Sakura tunnel. That's what we would like to do for the people in Toronto.
A beautiful gift to our city that we still enjoy, and sunshine to enjoy them this weekend, Victoria.
Yes, an abundance of sunshine, finally. I like to enjoy it. And here's just some proof that we're not going to see any rain. High pressure is acting as a force field, and really not much cloud cover either until Sunday overnight. Even that diminishes away. So all good news for this weekend. Now, even better news is that we could potentially hit 20 degrees. Now, we are a little bit late. The last time we saw the latest 20-degree temperature was May 19th, 1978. Now, we are on track to beat out one of the top three there, because Toronto, the specific city of Toronto, hasn't seen 20 degrees. Other places in and around, though, have already. So let's just take it day by day. Tuesday, not quite there yet. 17 degrees. Guelph could get up to 20. Waterloo could get up to 21. And Wednesday, that's the day we could potentially get to 20 degrees. Just 19 right now, though, is what we're forecasting. We need one more degree, and as we head into Thursday, that's when we get up to 22. So this could be the day that we break the record for one of the top three. I don't know if that's necessarily a good record to be breaking, the latest May temperature, but if we look into your long range forecast, up to 24 degrees by next weekend. So something to look forward to.
The future does look bright. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you so much.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here Monday at 6. Have a great weekend and stay safe out there, everybody.